The Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It's Wednesday, February 4th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, along with my co-host, my son, fellow investigator, fellow researcher, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear an incredible 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information, and analysis. We're going to get into certain things tonight that really comprises the framework that consists of the news that you hear in the mainstream media. You're listening to the Onion Show, where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, and the fog of disinformation, just to bring you the news behind the news. Our nightly slot, of course, we broadcast every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base on the internet is hagmannandhagmann.com, and we're simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at thehagmannandthehagmannreport.com. Thanks for joining us tonight, folks. We've got a marvelous, incredible program for you. I want to remind everyone that tonight's broadcast, portions of tonight's broadcast, brought to you by Pro Flowers. What a fantastic company, fantastic product, great product, as a matter of fact, flowers for that special person in your life. You know, Valentine's Day is next week. If you have a wife, a mother, fiance, whatever, guys, I'm talking to you now. You know her friends are going to ask, so what did your husband, your fiance, your son, what do you get her for Valentine's Day? Well, you can impress that special person in your life and her friends by visiting Pro Flowers. That's right, proflowers.com, and ordering, for example, one of many selections. But right now, there's an offer of 100 blooms of love with a free glass vase for just $19.99 using our code word Hagmann, using the code Hagmann upon purchase. More on that later. But meanwhile, Joe, welcome to the studio. It's a great day. It's balmy, it's a balmy 10 degrees out there with about a foot and a half of snow expected here in the near term, I think. I don't know. I shouldn't exaggerate. Probably a half a foot anyway expected.
Well, on top of the 20 to 24 inches we received a few days ago, we are now getting another, what looks to be at least 6 to 10 inches. And fun driving out there, I tell you.
Yeah.
Anybody who is in a warm location, especially tropical location, enjoy it.
It's definitely a three-dog night over here.
One of those nights where you go shovel and clean off the car, and an hour later you go back out and it looks like you didn't do anything.
What car? Can't see it for the snow. Oh, my goodness. A lot of news. Tonight, the title of the program, it might sound a little bit deceiving, but we're going to be looking at what's going on here with ISIS. And the big news, of course, is the burning alive of the Jordanian pilot that was captured by ISIS. And Fox News was the only mainstream media to show the video unedited and gruesome. Doesn't even begin to describe it. Now, if I can set the stage here a little bit, because I think this is important, Joe.
Yeah.
In fact, Joe and I were talking earlier today. Go ahead.
Well, just remember, for those who don't know, when you started the website Northeast Intelligence Network, you were criticized for being airing.
That's exactly where I was going to go. Yeah,
airing the whole beheading videos, not censoring them just as they are. And you actually were on Neil
Cavuto, yeah.
And he kind of took you to task or made some remarks that...
He didn't. Bob Dornan did afterwards.
Somebody made some remarks that it was inappropriate and irresponsible for you to do that, and that stuff shouldn't be, shown across TV.
Yeah. Well, I still have, and I have to locate this. I know it's on a hard drive that's ferreted away somewhere, but I have to locate the Fox News clip, and the images that are from that. But it was, I recall this day specifically, and this is kind of the framework that sets it up. Initially, we had right after the invasion of Iraq, and of course with all of the beheading videos that started to come out after the invasion of Iraq. I think around the time of Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter, and others. We had, and this is when bandwidth was not. I mean, it was limited and it was expensive, much more expensive than it is today. So think back in 2003, 2004, and even 2005. Anyway, we had infiltrated the Islamic language Arabic language Islamic terrorism websites. And we had people behind firewalls or people behind the password-protected sites. And they would post these videos, and our government was in there. The CIA was inside there, grabbing the Osama bin Laden videos, as we would grab them too and download them and analyze them. And we began downloading the beheading videos, and then we posted them. And we did. I did this with a rather heavy heart, because obviously, number one, they're hideous, and number two, the families of the victims. I couldn't imagine. And did I mention they're hideous? I just want, and I had Joe watch them, and this is when he was younger, of course. And Joe, I mean, it sticks in your mind, doesn't it? The gruesome nature of these videos.
Not only does the visual aspect of the videos remain in my mind, but the sound of the people as they're beheaded is something that you never will forget.
And exactly. And having been one of the initial analysts, I suppose, for lack of a better term, unofficial analysts of these videos, there is a distinct difference between what we're seeing today versus what they looked like back then. And at any rate, we had we had put up the videos. I had talked to Steve Quayle, and we put them up, and they got a lot of traffic. The majority of the downloads were from the military and from our own government agencies. And it was nothing for us to get hit with a $2,000 bandwidth bill for a month, for example. It was tough. It was tight back then. And I received a call one day from Fox News, and Neil Cavuto, we were one of the only legitimate, for lack of a better term, legitimate websites, Western websites that had ran with these videos. So the producer, one of the producers from Fox News, said, "Hey, Neil Cavuto would like to interview you later today." And I said, "Sure, okay." And the subject was, why are you posting these videos? And as Joe alluded to, there were a lot of people who thought it was horrific. And here was my position. And my position was based on a couple of things. I had appeared on a documentary in Canada, similar to what 60 Minutes would be here in the United States, but in Canada, and I don't even recall the name of it, but I had said that this was the clash of civilizations and a horrific religious war and what have you. But my point was that people were not understanding the savagery of Islam. Now, I still contend to this day. I do contend that Islam is a horrifically violent religion. It's backed up by the Quran and the surahs and by other non-canonical books, shall we say, of the Quran, much like the Holy Bible would be. But the Quran is extremely violent and extremely decisively violent. We posted the beheading videos. It got a lot of play. We watched the IP addresses. Yes, and the military and intelligence services in America and in Great Britain, they downloaded them frequently. When I was on Neil Cavuto, he said, why? And again, I reaffirmed the savage aspect of things and saying, you could say, for example, that Daniel Pearl was beheaded, but until you see exactly how, you tend to think that there was it was a very clean murder. And as Joe mentioned, no, it was not. And these beheadings were horrible, and there was a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
And the analysis of the video themselves, and I remember this specifically as well, and looked at certain things here. The quality of the videos was interesting. In some parts, you could tell that there was additions, edits. It was very obvious, but the murders themselves were not. I mean, with the exception of one, we believe that all of the videos that we saw were legitimate. There was one that the Berg video, and we believe that he was already dead, given the fact that there was no arterial spurting, no blood at the time. So, having said all of that, and that's not to justify my decision, because I still have a heavy heart from that, frankly. I really do. But one thing that it did do was cause people to send us emails and saying, I want to thank you because I did show this to, insert name of person here. And that person said, okay, I didn't realize that this was going on. Now, I suppose that there could be other ways. The argument is, of course, and I've used this argument myself, you don't have to stick your hand in a blender to know it's going to hurt and get ugly. So, at any rate, we after a while, after this, what we felt reached a saturation point where enough was enough, we stopped posting those videos. Quite frankly, we couldn't afford it. And it was a natural, to me, it seemed like a natural thing to do. In other words, okay, here it is. Everyone in law enforcement, everyone in the media, everyone elsewhere who believed that this was just a clean operation. You saw it, you had the opportunity. Now that's it. We're taking them down, and that's what we did. And I'll just say it again. I don't know if I was right. I don't know if I was wrong. It is what it is, and that's why we put it up. So, but we continued to look at the videos that came after that, and we looked at the quality of the videos. We looked at the production quality, and one thing we noticed about 2007, especially 2006, 2007, the production quality of the videos began to increase. By 2009 and 2010, they were almost Hollywood-like. Today, they're with the film of the Jordanian pilot. This is professionally done. The filming. I'm talking about the filming. The pre and post production work of this video was professionally done. It was clearly evident. This took a while to do. I talked to a few people who know what they're doing in terms of pre and post production work with videos. And an average person working roughly at 8 hours a day would take 5 to 7 days. So this is probably a week in the making. And based on everything that it would appear, this Jordanian pilot was most likely killed sometime before the Japanese hostage was beheaded. Now, the reason I said all that is because I think, and Joe and I were talking about this and really trying to come to grips with this, we're being gamed. We know Islam is violent. We know that the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, is extremely violent. But we also know that we know how it began, and we know that ISIS is really a creation, whether it, and we can argue this all day long, was it an intentional creation of the Western intelligence services, or did it happen as an accident, or did we accidentally create this? Well, I'm of the opinion that no, this was no accident, this was intentional. Well, that opens up a whole different series of questions. If it was intentional, then for what purpose, to what end? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. But considering the fact that we had in our grasp the leader of ISIS, the emir, the prince of ISIS,
as well as other
right,
higher-ranking ISIS officials now who were being held in Guantanamo Bay, some released freely, some released in a prisoner swap for Bo Bergdahl.
Yeah. The Guantanamo 5 or the Guantanamo 7. It depends on which number and who you listen to. But I mean, consider this: Abu al-Baghdadi, or Abu Dua, his real name, and if, boy, I'll slaughter this, but Awad Ibrahim Ali al-Badri al-Samari. He was held prisoner by U.S. forces from 2005 through 2009. This is the leader of ISIS. And remember, in case this sounds familiar to you folks, remember that our military quoted him as saying that when he was released from Camp Abuka in Iraq in 2009, remember what he said? He said, "Hey, I'll see you guys in New York." Now think about that. That was in 2009. Some within the media and some intelligence analysts that you're seeing on the news, on Fox News, and even some political pundits on the right and on the left say he was radicalized by his experiences in captivity. Others, however, describe him as having been this radical preacher. And when I say preacher, I'm talking about perhaps I wouldn't even use the word preacher. I'd use the word how about key terrorist, imam under Saddam Hussein. When I say under Saddam Hussein, he lived in Iraq. He went to the University of Baghdad. Now, in 2011, he was listed as a terrorist by the United Nations. Baghdadi, as he's commonly referred to now, not by his real name, he had this charm about him. Boy, that doesn't belong in that paragraph, I don't suppose, but he did. He kind of a rock star with the foreign fighters who flocked to Iraq, and last year he announced the creation of a new group that would be merged with a rival of Al Qaeda, the Al Qaeda affiliate that's active in Syria, Jawat al-Nusra. Now that was disputed by everybody, from that group to other groups saying no, kind of backing away from any connection to Baghdadi. And Baghdadi is always described among people as being much more extreme than bin Laden. But when you look at things, and I urge people, I mean, you've got to look at this with open eyes. I got to tell you, by the looks of things, you got to ask yourself a question: was Baghdadi trained during that 2005 to 2009 period? Now, let me just kind of back up here a little bit, and then I'm going to toss it to you, Joe. What we're seeing here, these horrifying, terrifying headlines and the shocking, revolting videos. ISIS is being used as a tool to to justify the war in the Middle East and to cause fear and panic, not just there but here. Remember that statement, "I'll see you in New York." This isn't some stupid, far-out, far-flung, crazy conspiracy theory. It's really consistent with war, the principles of war. We have to understand, and I think it's important for all of us to understand, that ISIS was or is the creation. It was created by the very forces that are currently fighting it. And of course, we have the Hegelian dialectic, and the funding of both sides of the war, and having to have. Well, you're exploiting a cult, and please listen to me carefully. You're exploiting a cult that's predisposed to a certain course of conduct, such as beheadings and very oppressive and tyrannical activity, and exploiting the nature of that cult within the Middle East and elsewhere. So, ever since the creation of democracy, ever since democracy, ever since modern day, since modern times, the political class among the political leadership that we have within our nation and other nations, they've always got a dilemma. War is needed to sustain economies, to gain power, riches, control. But by default, the default setting of the population is anti-war. Not viscerally anti-war, but in general against war. So what do you do? If it's in the best interest of the government and the leadership to go to war, or have war, or be in a constant state of war, and the population's default setting is, no, we don't want to do that. What do you do? Well, you can look back in history and see how that's been handled. The political machinery creates an enemy that's so flipping terrifying that your neighbor's pet bird will be scared and beg the political powers to go to war to eradicate the threat. Some argue, and I'm not sure, some will argue that this is exactly why ISIS exists. This is why the beheading videos are so exquisitely well produced and made public worldwide through the mainstream media, in this case Fox News, with the torching of the Jordanian pilot. It's to create this fear and to the anger, to create anger, and to say, look, let's go bomb the hell out of these people because this is not right. Let's go shoot them. And not only, and you can read this on the various forums. Let's kill them and nuke everything, and not only kill them, kill everybody that they know. Their dogs, their cats, their kids. Let's kill them, kill their pets, and burn their houses down. Okay, that's kind of the reaction. I talked to a number of people today about their reaction to the video, and they said it's horrible and we need to kill them. This to me, and Joe, I don't know. To me, this is like having a dog, a service dog, and my apologies in advance to dogs, because I love dogs. But having a service dog and deliberately injecting them with rabies, turning them loose, and then saying we've got a problem. You've got to kill the dog. Right?
Yeah, of course. Obviously it can't be cured, but creating the problem.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yeah,
creating the problem, making it worse by having that problem now threaten the safety and lives of others, and then, calling for action.
Well, the current objectives here are to sway public opinion in to favor the invasion of countries in the Middle East and to provide the pretext for a joint effort all across the world to strike out against this threat and to create the threat here domestically. And when I say here domestically, talking about the United States or even Canada or wherever you might be listening to this. Look at what happened in France. It strikes me as being very interesting that we had that assassination at that magazine in France, and then that you had the world leaders coming together. For that situation still strikes me as being very eerie. It still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up for obvious reasons, but for reasons I just have not yet been able to put my finger on. I mean, for the obvious reasons and for the not so obvious reasons, I get that, but there's something much, 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 much greater in all of that. But then you've got this burning of the Jordanian pilot at the same time. So you've got outrage in France, and now you've got outrage in the world against ISIS. Now, please understand me. ISIS is extremely... These people are savages. They're lower than savages. As I said, it's like, a rabid dog. With my apologies to dogs. But having said that, if you deliberately inject a service dog, we'll say, let's say you have a dog that you train to be a guard dog, to attack on command. It's already predisposed for attacking someone on command. It's a service dog. It's providing a service. What you trained it to do. This is what you trained it to do. So when you could give the dog a command and the dog goes out and mauls whoever you tell it to maul or instruct it to maul to the point where the dog rips the throat out of the person, you cannot be angry at the dog because the dog is predisposed in that case to that behavioral pattern, trained to do so. Now, inject that same animal with rabies and then turn it loose, and then say, oh, wait a minute, we've got a problem. To me, that's exploiting the situation. That's taking advantage of the situation. And also, the fault lies, yes, with the dog as at the very most basic sense, but the fault really rests with the person who owned it or trained or handled it and then injected it with the rabies virus. You see where I'm going with this? Look at, and this is what we have with ISIS. And using that same example, what's the motive of injecting the dog with rabies and sending that dog out? Or more, 4 or 5 dogs with rabies and sending them out. And who's doing this? And I think we know the answer to that question. Who's doing this? And for what purpose? I think we know the answer to that question. Do these dogs need to be put down? Absolutely. But so do the handlers. The handlers need to be exposed, tried, and if convicted, executed in such a manner that it would get the message across to the people who are handling. It would get the message across that this is... These globalists, this Luciferian agenda is beyond anything. The evil is well beyond the Middle Ages. Well, consistent with the Middle Ages, but well beyond anything of late. So, what we're seeing here is really the look, Zbigniew Brzezinski, the grand chessboard. He wrote this book back in the 70s. I believe it was. Wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote, moreover, as America becomes increasingly increasingly multicultural society, it may find more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues except in the circumstance of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat. I'll repeat that one more time. Moreover, as America becomes an increasingly multicultural society, it may find it more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues, except in the circumstance of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat. Now, this is Zygmunt Brzezinski from the Grand Chessboard, written back in the 1970s. He's the handler of he's the creator and handler of the rabid dog, and the purpose is for finding a common enemy, ultimately to. It's a multi-purpose enemy, but the end result is to create a single global governance. And if you look too, just go back in history. Somewhat about a decade or so after Iraq was invaded, I think everyone would agree, even the most hardened of neocons would agree, that the war itself, the invasion, was based on false premises. The weapons of mass destruction. That excuse was so often repeated by George Bush, Donald Rumsfeld. That was a complete fabrication. I fell for it. And then George Bush gets up before the National Press Club and makes a big joke about, they're not over here, not under here. Meanwhile, you've got people dying in mass, being murdered in mass. But regardless, the U.S. and the Allies, along with the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, we discuss this, and other various international opinion think tank groups and what have you, they're looking and are continuing to expand war in the Middle East. We saw that with Syria, and Syria remains a target of both the United States and Israel. And I find it interesting that Israel wants to take a gamble, take Assad out of there and gamble with the devil they don't know rather than the devil that they do know. But the general public, again, the default is not to go to war, and we have been decidedly against any type of invasion in Syria. At the height of that resistance, and we've mentioned this before, there was a video where, at the height of the resistance, we had the failed fake chemical attack, ostensibly at the hands of Assad, but it was found against the people, but it was found that the anti-Assad terrorists were responsible for that. And then fast forward now to the news. You saw the New York Post and the London papers, and there was a video where Islamic terrorist beheaded an American journalist. You remember that? There was a video that was shot in very high definition, cinematic type thing, and the beheading videos are designed, we know, to generate this feeling of horror and terror. But remember, and you might recall this Western journalist, he is dressed in the orange jumpsuit, very much reminiscent of what we saw at Guantanamo Bay. Held in, it was just a horrific, barbaric act. Can you think of any better way to sway public opinion for revenge, for war against this entity? Well, it was after that incident, after Syria, after the failed Syrian thing. The war against ISIS was declared. It came into being, if you recall how swiftly this ISIS developed. It was almost as if it was planned for years, because ISIS went from ISIS is kind of like Barack Hussein Obama. His political career, from relative obscurity to meteoric rise, that's ISIS. That's Obama. Go back to what Panetta said. Remember, Panetta is an ex-CIA director. He stated that Americans should brace ourselves for a war that'll last 3 decades. He said this here within the last couple of years. I don't have the exact date on this, and I apologize, but he said, I think we're looking at a kind of a 30-year war, one that will have to extend beyond Islamic State to include emerging threats in Nigeria, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, and elsewhere. Now, this is Leon Panetta. And obviously, this is right around the time of, I would say 2011, 2012, perhaps. I don't have the date, but you get the idea. And then bang, we've got this Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And I do contend that the name itself, the acronym itself, should be very revealing, very symbolic. Can anyone explain why an Islamic group is named after a Babylonian goddess? Maybe it's because because this Babylonian goddess is a favorite figure of the occult, the occultists, the Satanists, the very people I spoke of, and we spoke of in the last or 2 shows ago, which I truly believe are the true handlers of this group, the global satanic elite. And, look, people will say, oh, you're just nuts. CIA or Western intelligence behind some Islamic group to further political interests. It's crazy. Well, you can look at history where the U.S. openly supported groups, freedom fighters. Look at the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, a group that was created by the CIA to lure the Soviets into this Afghan trap. And the joke among the CIA and the global elite back then, was what is the Russian word for, or what's Russian for Vietnam? And of course, the answer, jokingly, is Afghanistan. That was back in the 80s, before the Mujahideen, and the Mujahideen being the CIA creation against the Soviets. Anyway, the Mujahideen describes the name as Muslims who struggle in the path or for Allah. And it comes from the root word jihad, which the great enemy of today is the friend of the past. Anyway, the architect of this policy was none other than Zbigniew Brzezinski, one of the most influential people in U.S. history, right from JFK through Obama. He's been an important figure in shaping U.S. policy all across the world. He created the Trilateral Commission with David Rockefeller. Remember this? So, anyway, and I'll just quote this and then finish this up here. Brzezinski explained, there was an interview in 1998 where Brzezinski in 1998 Brzezinski was interviewed. I'm not sure how much press this got, or I'm not sure if this interview got any legs. I haven't seen it much. But Brzezinski explains how the Mujahideen were used in Afghanistan. There was a question during this interview, and I kind of wish I had a tape of this, but anyway, the former director of the CIA, here's a question. The former director of the CIA, Robert Gates, stated in his memoirs, I might have gotten that date wrong, I apologize. The former director of the CIA, Robert Gates, stated in his memoirs, The American intelligence services began to aid the Mujahideen in Afghanistan 6 months before the Soviet intervention. In this period, you were the national security advisor to President Carter. You therefore played a role in this affair. Is that correct? Now, here's Brzezinski's answer. I don't suppose the date matters. This should speak for itself. Yes. According to the official version of history, CIA aid to the Mujahideen began during 1980. That is to say, after the Soviet army invaded Afghanistan on Christmas Eve in 1979. But in reality, secretly guarded until now, is completely otherwise. Indeed, it was July 3rd, 1979, that President Carter signed the first directive for secret aid to the opponents of the pro-Soviet regime in Kabul. And that very day, I wrote a note to the President in which I explained to him that, in my opinion, this aid was going to induce a Soviet military intervention. Now think about that. Think about that for a moment. The public, or everything. The official narrative was December 24th, 1979. It all happened spontaneously. It was a spontaneous response to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. No, it was the other way around. We lured through Brzezinski, Russia into Afghanistan, and Brzezinski was the architect. So, are we seeing the same thing played out right now? My question is, what's Brzezinski doing? Lastly, the pictures of Baghdadi are few in public, and I think a lot of people will recall the picture as head of ISIS, Baghdadi standing in front of a microphone. He was dressed in black, and he had his right arm to kind of like in a Napoleonic pose at a microphone. Look at the jewelry he's wearing. Jewelry, we're talking about either a Rolex watch or some sort of designer fashion watch, while he's decrying Western decadence. The point I'm trying to make is this guy's well-funded. And the ISIS propaganda material, well-funded, well-produced, state-of-the-art. Their production is well beyond anything I ever saw in 2003 and we ever saw in 2004, 5, 6, 7. This is something totally different. And one more thing, Naomi Wolf, I believe she's a former journalist with a journalist who formerly worked for a major media outlet, had previously written about ISIS and about the kidnappings and beheadings and such, that two of the hostages, this is a while back now, a couple of the hostages she writes from ISIS, they go to long careers, or from long careers into with the military to humanitarian work. And she wrote that the same is true of the one British hostage. She asked the question, where are they getting all these folks from? Look at their background. Are they really humanitarians? It's not to say they're not doing humanitarian work, but is it a pretext? Is it a cover for the CIA? That's a great question. That's an extremely great question. So, all of that to say, we're looking at, and I would urge people to really widen the scope. It's easy to say, and it's not wrong to say that these people are barbaric, they're savage, and in fact they're beyond savage, and they need to be put down like a rabid dog. They absolutely do. But you see, we can put down the rabid dog only to have more rabid dogs because of the handler, the people that created the rabid dog, they're still around. And they're still creating more and more and more. So not only do we have to put down the rabid dog, which is unfortunate, but more to the point and more directly and more effectively, we've got to put down their handlers. And who are their handlers? Western intelligence, including but not limited to the CIA and Israeli intelligence. And for those of you who think Israel intelligence or that I'm bashing Israel, you can go pound sand. I'm not. We're all big boys here and big girls. We're adults, aren't we? You know, put your big boy pants on and put your big girl pants on or skirt on. Don't tell me I'm anti-Semitic by saying that there's bad people in Mossad. Take your complaints elsewhere. You want to call my sponsors? Go ahead and call them. You want to send me nasty, vicious, vile, hateful emails? Go ahead. I delete them. But see, that's the knee-jerk reaction of morons, of non-intellectual people, unwilling to see the bigger picture. There's more stuff going on than what's being. There's more stuff going on here. And oh, by the way, it will come to America. It already is. It's already here. It's just going to become more evident, more visible. You can expect it. You can expect it in the short term.
Yeah.
And that concludes my opening statement.
Absolutely, you can expect it. You reap what you sow, and the things that our government has done in our name, the problems that have been created, the unrest, the deaths that have been and can be attributed to our policies and actions in those countries will come back to be happening on our soil. It's just the way it works.
You know, stoking panic around the world and in the United States and in North America and in every Western country, provoking a state of chaos in the Middle East. It is necessary to implement a new world order. ISIS, the Egyptian goddess and the mother of Horus, that twisted, insane acronym for this Islamic group, the name of one of the most important figures of the Masonic elite, Babylonian goddesses, their motto, order out of chaos. What are we seeing?
Complete chaos. There
you go. And now I rest my case, or that concludes my opening statement now. But the fact that, you know, but look, it's not, everything is not as it seems.
Yeah, you just have to change your perception or know what to look and where to look, because to many people it appears as things are fine. The economy's fine. We're recovering. We are moving forward. Gas prices are cheap. What more could we ask for, you know? Is the average person's attitude out there. But
you know, Joe, you mentioned it. Let me ask you a question. Low gas prices.
Okay.
All right. We know that adversely affects the economies of Russia and of Venezuela. What does it do here in the United States? What industry does low gas prices affect here in the United States?
Well, the one obvious is there was a huge boom in drilling in North Dakota, and all those people that have been moving to North Dakota from Texas up to North Dakota to work on these new I don't know what you call them, oil wells, have been probably laid off and are now out of work. But the fracking, the cheaper method of extracting energy by pressurized water or however they do it,
you got it,
has been the more popular type. The same thing that causes the earthquakes in Oklahoma and other areas.
Isn't it interesting, ladies and gentlemen? Obama comes out and these politicians come out and they say, wow, fracking bad. Oh, no fracking. Look, this is not about fracking. I'm not talking about, you might be totally against it, you might be totally for it. That's not the point. Don't even bring that up. Here's the point. It's a backhanded way to bankrupt those people involved in fracking, and I never thought of it that way. Just like the artificial shortage created by the ammunition, be it with the DHS buying the ammunition. I'm not saying that was the only reason, or the primary reason even. I'm just saying that was one of the blowbacks of the ammunition shortages. So, what better way to bankrupt the fracking industry than to ensure lower gas prices?
Very good point.
All right. And one other thing, too, since I've dominated this hour, shame on me. Joe's over there. He's got his pillow and blanket, and I don't blame him, because it's just one of those days, you know.
Wish I had my pillow and blanket.
I got to tell you, you know, here's another thing that really chaps my butt. I wasn't planning it. I put this aside, but I want to mention this. I was going to talk about this tomorrow. You know, we've got these Republicans and Democrats. If your neighbor, ladies and gentlemen, or your snotty uncle who's a progressive Marxist communist idiot, it's sorry, I'm just in one of those moods, you know. You sit at the table saying, well, you know, Republicans are bad, Democrats good, progressives good, right? Progressives, we're for the little people. We are for the working people. We care. Well, you know, you can, boy, I'll tell you, you're going to need both a general surgeon and a proctologist to remove my boot from your butt, apparently, because look, it's interesting to look at this. It's all about money. That's all it is. There are 7 ex-lawmakers, 5 House members and 2 senators. They left office in January. What are they doing right now? Well, they've cashed in on their careers as public servants. Yeah, that's laughable. But they're working for lobbying firms. And you might say, those astute out there, those very astute of you, might say, hey, wait a minute. Mercer, you can't do that. You've got to wait at least a year if you're a House member, or 2 if you're a senator. You can't work for a lobbying firm. It's against the rules. It's against the law. Remember, we remember America made that against the law, right? Yeah, well, they found a way around it. You see, less than a month after leaving office, 5 former House members and 2 senators, they're already on the payroll at firms that make millions of dollars lobbying their congressional colleagues. What they do is once they lose their position as a senator or a representative, they get up from their seat. Someone else sits down. They walk over to their locker within the Capitol building. They change out of one suit into another. They go back to the seat they go back into Congress and pal up with their buddies and lobby. But that's against the law. Well, see, here's the loophole. Here's a loophole that allows that revolving door of perpetual pandemonium-like perversity to exist, for that stream of money influence, and to allow this seemingly endless. I'll stop there. Anyway, what they're doing is there's a loophole. So instead of waiting the year or 2, if you're a rep, and 2 if you're a senator, what they do is this: they get hired on as consultants. Oh, yeah, consultants. Well, we're not really working for these companies. We're not lobbyists. I'm just a consultant. So here are the shameless 7. Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss. He's with DLA Piper. His title's a partner. The lobbying income alone there from that 2014 from that firm, $8 million. Clients include PGA, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Pfizer. Huh. How about How about Representative Lee Terry from Nebraska? Yeah, he's a senior advisor with Kelly Dry Warren. Their lobbying income last year was $3.5 million. The clients include ExxonMobil, Kroger, and Alliance for American Manufacturing. And then you've got good old Republican Jim Gerlach from Pennsylvania, senior advisor for, senior legislative advisor for Venable LLP. Their lobbying income $8 million. Clients Lockheed Martin, Blackstone, and Verizon. Then you got the Democrats, Representative Jim Matheson. Now I kind of wish I had caps on my teeth like that. Principal of Squire Patton Boggs, $30 million in 2014 lobbying revenue. Clients include Amazon, Goldman Sachs, and General Electric. And then, of course, Democrat. I'm sorry, Jim Matheson. Did I say he was a Democrat? If I said Republican, it's wrong. Democrat. Jim Moran. Oh, you know him. That Democrat from Virginia. It's not exactly what I was going to say, but a senior legislative advisor for McDermott, Will and Emery, $4.5 million in 2014 lobbying income. Clients, Brewers Association, Trinity Health Coalition for Fair and Rational Taxation. And then you got Democrat Bill Owens from he's a strategic advisor. Yeah, I want one of those positions. How do I apply for that? Let me apply for the senior strategic advisor position, please. I guess that wouldn't be on Craigslist.
Qualified.
Yeah. McKenna Long and Aldridge LLP, their lobbying income, man, boy, I wouldn't even go to work for these people. There was only $830,000 last year. That can't be right. They're notable clients. University of Georgia, Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. Oh, there's why. And then the much ballyhooed Democratic Senator Mark Begich from Alaska, founder, strategic advisor. He started his own company called Northern Compass Group and grabbed right away the National Association for Home Care and Hospice and Grant Aviation. And here's why I mentioned this. Because, you see, it wasn't suddenly the day after they left office. I mean, it was the day after they left office that they hooked up with these groups, right? But you don't, when have you, and I'm serious, when have you worked a full-time job? Anyone listener out there, have you worked a full-time job? Never, I mean, just putting it all, just giving it all. And then on Monday, or on Tuesday, we'll say, you no longer have that job. But Wednesday, you not only have a job, you walk in and everything's set up for you, and you're an advisor, a strategic advisor for these groups that have power and influence, or will have power and influence within Capitol Hill, and already have, with the exception of Begich, who started his own, but all of these other lobbying firms already were in Capitol Hill. What does that mean? That means, and it doesn't take a detective to prove this, that means that these people, these pathetic people who are supposed to be working for us, we were paying them. They're public servants. They're working for us. We don't work for them. They should be scared of us. We shouldn't be scared of them. That means that they were moonlighting. And look, I've hired people. I've fired people. I've had people work for me. Moonlight. It's not right. It's not right. So, the reason I brought that up, folks, is the fact that Gerald Celente and others talk about the kleptocracy. There it is. Don't tell me it's just the Republicans, and don't tell me it's only the Democrats. It's both. And they're both they both have blood on their hands and money in their safe. Folks, you're listening to a Monday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. It is the 4th day of February 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann with Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann.
Ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this February 4th, 2015 edition, a Wednesday of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is just my father and I flying solo tonight, as we have guests lined up for the rest of the week. Tune in tomorrow to hear Nathan Leal as he gives us his first installment of the Super Bowl breakdown, the insight in his opinion, and usually comes with a fact sheet, pictures, all kinds of information to back up what he says he has saw or found in the Super Bowl commercials, halftime show, the symbolism, the hidden messages, overt messages, and he does a great breakdown of the Super Bowl. He has, last year we did, 5-6 shows on it?
Yeah.
And he's got, I talked to him, I think, yesterday, and he already had so much. Can't wait to hear what he has tomorrow.
And Joe, the reason, too, and ladies and gentlemen, and folks who had sent me the cover, the high quality cover for The Economist, I'm going to thank you so much. You can read out there on various internet websites and forums what they believe The Economist is trying to say. Well, I have, right here on my desk, Joe, here at the studio, you can see the papers for this report that I'm putting together, but in talking with Nathan, the Economist cover has got to be viewed in the context of this past Super Bowl, the previous 2 Super Bowls, the 2012 Olympics, and really everything that the statement by Angela Merkel in front of the National, or was it the National Press or National Press Club or whatever?
It's all
they're all related.
He said to me, last year's Super Bowl and this year's Super Bowl. This year was more of a continuation or a part 2 of what happened last year.
That's exactly correct. And so, for those of you who think I'm dogging it, I'm not. It's actually looking at, trying to create a more comprehensive and cohesive picture, because if we miss, and if we look at, it's like looking at a serial killer and their various crime scenes to connect the crime scenes, or to identify both primary and secondary crime scenes. For those of you who watch CSI or places like, or shows like that, you understand what I mean. So, by not doing so, you shortchange. You don't get the true big picture, and you lose not just a lot of information, but you lose you lose really the sight of the true motive. And the motive is what it's all about, as well as the telegraphing of the information. That's our studio dog, by the way. I just want to mention that we brought, both Joe and I, it was funny, I brought my studio dog in. She's a half, mostly Australian Shepherd and then part cattle dog. And she lays, it's so cute. We've got a bank of monitors, and she lays by the monitors. She heard something outside her studio, apparently, and she just went, not so if you heard that, but she's cute. I've got a personal Facebook page. I don't really post much to it, but I got a picture on there of her probably sleeping. I think that was maybe 2 months ago. She's going to be 7 months old next week, a week from today, and we rescued her. She rescued us. But anyway,
she is cute.
Yeah, she is. And of course, no one could ever replace our iconic king. And Nancy, and you know who I'm talking to. Nancy, yes, I got the most beautiful painting Joe and I did of hand-painted oil painting of King, and I'm going to take a picture of it. I do have pictures of it, but it's actually put in a glass frame right now, and I'm going to put it on there. It's just
it's an amazing picture.
Yeah, and I don't have permission to use her last name, but every time I look at it, it just brings a tear to my eye, because King was one of the most regal animals ever, and I got to tell you, you miss him a lot. And anyway.
Yeah, he is missed so much. Let's get into some news this hour. We're going to be taking calls in the third hour, maybe into the later in this hour. But a couple of important pieces of news that came across the wire here that I wanted to hit. This one, very interesting. Homeland Security threatens consequences if funding bill isn't passed. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Jan Johnson released a statement Thursday night saying any politically charged amendments in the DHS funding bill that will attempt to defund or execute actions on immigration reform would result in consequences. Johnson warns that DHS, if it were to be funded by a short-term funding bill, known as continuing resolution, the department would not be able to fund new non-disaster grants to state, local, and tribal governments, local law enforcement, emergency response officials, and other departments. Secretary Johnson said that some state and local government activities include counterterrorism equipment and gear for major metropolitan cities, which would be cut from the department due to runs on short-term funding bills.
But Joe, they should cut. You know what? I'm all for just defunding DHS completely, right? I mean, isn't everyone? Shouldn't everyone be that way?
In theory, yeah, but
what do you mean in theory?
They've become the head agency of all other administrative executive departments.
Well, just like private industry. I mean, look, we ran a business. We've got a corporation, and that's right, folks. I mean, our investigative business, it's a subchapter S corporation based in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We file taxes like that. But when you have too many corporate officers and not enough people on the ground investigating, you've got a top-heavy organization, and you find that you don't need these people. So I'll tell you something, flat out. Get rid of DHS. Go back to communities that actually conduct police work.
Absolutely. But we have FEMA and just that whole bureaucratic nightmare that sucks up all the tax money.
Did you know, Joe, that in Utah, and folks, I don't know how many of you know this, maybe most of you do, 17 football fields is the size of the NSA Data Collection Center just in Utah. Now think about this for a second.
That's a lot.
Okay, yeah. Now, think about your thumbnail drive or flash drive, whatever you call those, how much data they can now hold. How much do you think can be held at a center that big? How many of those flash drives, at 16 gig flash drives? Or, I mean, how much data can they hold? And people are trying to convince us, the government's trying to convince us that, oh, wait a minute, we're not recording everything, or we're not connected, it's just metadata. Yeah. That's why you need the facility that's 17 football fields big, right? Not true.
This article further goes on to state further that the Department of Homeland Security sent out letters to different individuals that were considered veiled threats, as one Sheriff Justin Smith of Lemire County, Colorado, said his office received a letter about the funding bill from Johnson. Smith said he considered it to be a veiled threat. Smith says the letter was addressed to all police chiefs and sheriffs around the country. Smith wrote on his Facebook page, his letter made it clear Congress did not send President Obama the DHS funding bill that he wanted, rubber stamping the president's executive amnesty. Local and state public safety agencies would not receive federal grants they were counting on because the president would veto the DHS funding bill. So here we have the government incorporating a immigration a funding bill that would fund immigration and other activities, and they threaten the law enforcement community because their funding is incorporated into this bill, or it is the bill, and they've since incorporated the immigration finance into the bill. So if the president doesn't get what he wants, well, he's not the only one that's going to suffer. The immigration community is not the only community going to suffer. They're going to make local law enforcement suffer. I mean, if you look at it like this, it's almost like, hey, cops and everybody out there, local, state, we got to pass this bill. And if we don't, you're going to be hard up for money.
What are they going to do? Are they going to repo the MRAPs or what?
It's almost like they're telling the police to go out and, like the mafia, and persuade people to vote or to write their senators to vote in the proper way. It's just this thuggery that there's going to be consequences if this bill isn't passed, not because of all the different functions that it does fund, but just based on the threats are based on the possibility of the exclusion of funding of amnesty. It's pretty.
There's a lot behind that.
That's criminal tactics 101. Extortion. And in other news pertaining to Obama's FCC net neutrality rules will be released on Thursday.
Oh boy.
Following President Obama's lead, FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler will announce new rules on Thursday changing internet providers from information services to telecommunication companies in order to impose the president's demand for net neutrality in their rules over them. Now, it's an important distinction to make between these, what they now are called as information services, to telecommunication companies, because there are many laws on the books pertaining to telecommunication companies and how they are to be regulated.
Right.
The Telecommunications Act of 1974.
Yep.
I mean, and it incorporates itself into the technological laws we see today, to the healthcare, to broadband. It is considered, will be considered now, not only a utility, but sort of like the phone, or it's not going to have the what they're doing is cracking down on the bigger companies like Netflix, who they say use 30% of the bandwidth overall in the world, where it's going to be pay per use instead of just paying a flat rate and being allowed to use whatever the amount of traffic is that you have. As you said earlier, you used to pay bandwidth, extra money for bandwidth. It's going to be going back to that. But behind all that, it's going to do much more damage, because it's not just about making the internet market fair and across the board market or business. They're going to do things that are invasive for customers and consumers.
Right, but before you get into that, Business Insider, and folks, this is how net neutrality is explained in like 60 seconds. Business Insider had published, this is going back maybe 6-7 months. I kept it because I knew that this is going to be important someday, and here we are. Here's how they explain it. Or here's from Business Insider before you get into the privacy aspects. They write, if you're not paying attention to net neutrality, you should be. In short, some internet service providers want to fundamentally alter, that's really not true, it's the government. Some internet service providers want to fundamentally alter the way the internet works and collect money from companies like Netflix and Facebook to guarantee their data can continue to reach users unimpeded. It's compared to there's an analogy of cars traveling down a freeway. Under a neutral internet, this flow of traffic is constant. It's unaffected. There are no toll booths, nothing. But if ISPs, for example, like Comcast, and this is the example used by Business Insider, which is a little skewed, but we'll go with it here. If ISPs like Comcast continue to get their way, companies will need to pay tolls where there previously were none. If they don't pay, their ability to send data to their users will be limited. Now, that's a very brief version. Netflix has already paid Comcast in order to ensure its traffic isn't regulated, even though the internet has operated as an unregulated, competitive free market for the past, 20 years? So, I mean, that's kind of, and there's a video with Business Insider, but the bottom line here, Joe, go ahead with the other parts you were talking about, the privacy aspect. We get SOPA, PIPA Act, all this.
Yeah. So the chairman of the SEC, Thomas Wheeler, said in an open letter on Wednesday that he's presenting his colleagues with a proposal this week that, if approved by a vote, will bring changes to the web traffic and the way it is governed. He says asking the FCC to accept a proposal that would let data delivered over broadband internet be regulated under Title II of the Communications Act, similar to how traditional telecommunications are governed already under the law. To preserve incentives for broadband operators to invest in their networks, my proposal will modernize Title II, tailoring it for the 21st century in order to provide returns necessary to construct competitive networks, Wheeler wrote. There will be no rate regulation, no tariffs, no last-minute unbundling if his plan is approved. He goes on to finish saying, over the last 21 years, wireless industry has invested about $300 billion under similar rules, proving that modernizing Title II regulation can encourage investment and competition, he added. The president goes on to make some statements saying the FCC needs to reclassify consumer broadband, and the whole purpose of this, as we said earlier, is it would also give the FCC the authority to regulate deals on the internet where broadband providers such as Comcast and Verizon pick up traffic from big content companies such as Netflix and network middlemen like they say Level 3 Communications Incorporated, which I've never heard of. Basically, what they're doing is they're going to be siphoning money from the companies who were innovative enough and on the front lines to be able to offer some of the more popular things that we can do on the internet, such as streaming TV and movies, like, as we said, Netflix and such.
This is pay to play.
Right, and not only that, they're going to be having to pay what Netflix pays now is a fraction of a percent of what they'll have to pay, and the money that they're going to pay is going to be used to grease the pockets of these middlemen and other companies such as Verizon and Comcast, who are getting the short end of the stick because people would rather pay Netflix $7 a month than pay $150 for cable.
Well, folks, if you want a great graphic, remember this, or you can write this down. A great graphic, a great website for a visual. If you don't like to read a lot and just like to look at pictures, it's theopeninter.net. One more time, theopeninter.net. So it'd be like the open internet, but it's theopeninter.net. And there it has a graphic that shows you what they want to do, and of course the bottom line here. I mean, you'll end up paying, who knows? You want email, Facebook, Skype, $10 a month. Hey, YouTube, be a steal at $10 a month. But why is this important? Free and open internet, single greatest technology of our time. Control should not be at the mercy of corporations, and really what this is the lawmakers, the Obama people, the FCC, the government. This is the ultimate kleptocracy or crony capitalism. This is not capitalism. This is
outright theft.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, really, it is. It's nothing more than another way of redistributing money, of taking money from one class of people to redistribute it to another class of people who are your people that can help you or that have helped you in the past. And this is the same system we see just being recycled throughout different industries to help the quote-unquote stakeholders, as the UN uses that term. But here out of the Wall Street Journal, there's an article here, Debt Mountains Spark Fear of Another Crisis. The world is awash with more debt than before the global financial crisis erupted in 2007. With China's debt relative to its economic size now exceeding U.S. levels, according to a report, global debt has increased by $57 trillion since 2007. Almost 200 trillion. Let me repeat that. It has increased. The global debt has increased from $57 trillion since 2007 to almost 200 trillion.
4 times in less than 8 years.
And not surprisingly, it's as far outpacing the economic growth calculations that were made. As a share of gross domestic product, debt has risen from 270% to 286%. Survey of debt across 47 countries, illustrated in a Financial Times interactive graphic, highlights how the hopes that the turmoil of the past 8 years would spur widespread deleveraging to safer levels were misplaced. The report calls for fresh approaches to preventing future debt crises. Overall debt relative to gross domestic product is now higher in most nations than it was before the crisis. Higher levels of debt pose questions about financial stability, McKinsey writes. Well, I would say higher debt levels pose not questions, but dangers to financial stability.
Yeah. I mean,
to say the least.
Look at your household.
Poses questions. I mean, we're beyond asking questions.
Well, the only question should be asked is how big should the ropes be and what lampposts? But okay.
Goes on to say that there are few indications that the current trajectory of the rising leverage will change, this report says. This calls into question the basic assumptions about debt and deleveraging and the adequacy of tools available to manage the debt and avoid future crises. One bright spot, she does say, is the evidence of deleveraging by banks. Financial sector debt relative to GDP has declined in the U.S. and a few other crisis-hit countries and stabilized in other advanced economies. Bottom line here, they go on to say there are huge financial issues or situations happening in Greece right now. I don't know if you've seen that, Dad.
Yep.
Kind of breaking or new today, but one of the things that's happening is the European Central Bank has blocked all funding to Greece. They've cut off all funding to Greece, and that's going to cause huge problems in the next few days, weeks, and months as it continues. But the report comes as Greece this week has pushed for a radical rethinking of its creditors of ways of tackling debt for economic problems. And these fresh approaches, McKinley suggests, are innovations in mortgages and other debt contracts to better share risks between borrowers and creditors. And we know that's not true. Creditors take no risk. The borrowers assume all the risks. But in the financial world, what's happening with Greece is that they are about to go through another round of, would we say, not austerity measures. This is something different than austerity measures.
Of course. This is a full communist, communist, I don't want to oversimplify it, but you've got the communists essentially taking over Greece and breaking away from, threatening the existence of the EU.
Here's what's going on in Greece. Headline, all hell breaking loose in Greece. With the European Central Bank shutting off direct funds to Greece today, one of the greats in the business warned King's World News that all hell is now breaking loose in Europe. He also warned that the situation is spiraling out of control and deteriorating quite rapidly.
Right.
Eric King, the EBC has now shut off direct funds to Greece, and they're playing hardball with Greek negotiators. John Hathaway said, "This is just a sign that things are spiraling out of control in a much worse direction than central planners had expected. That's what spooked the markets late Wednesday. I was amazed to see the Dow give up all of its gains in the space of a half hour." And it goes on to talk about
you can
there's
see
no contingency plans in this Eurozone deal,
right?
With Greek defaulting, and there is no plans for an exit strategy from the Euro system. So what is happening is you're seeing the political parties gaining power and the economic situation spiraling out of control, and it's going to spread to not only Greece but Spain and France, and there is now an open rebellion against Brussels. And it circles back to the dollar.
Well, it does. And the way I would look at this, explain it if I could, and maybe this is an oversimplification. If you've ever lived in a subdivision and you have a homeowners association, you're all neighbors in this neighborhood, but you belong to the homeowners association. And let's just throw in something a little bit more different, or something different, more complicated. not only do you have to abide by the rules of the homeowners association, but you also have, in this case, in this fictitious case I'm making up here, you also have not you just don't pay dues, but you also have a specific financial relationship beyond the dues paying with the homeowners. You've got direct relationships with all your neighbors in terms of financial relationships. And one of the neighbors decides, well, let's say the biggest and best and the most well-funded on the block, or a very important member of the homeowners association breaks away or does things to create problems within the homeowners association. That affects the entire homeowners situation or homeowners association and their future. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And that could be a very, very big oversimplification, but that's what's happening. And in this case, the homeowners association, the neighborhood represents the EU, the association represents the financial end of things, and the neighbor, of course, that's supposedly, or they're saying it's causing trouble, is Greece. Again, oversimplification, but you get the idea.
All right. Here's out of the Middle East. DIA, Islamic State spreading beyond Syria and Iraq. The ultra-violent Islamic State terrorist group is expanding beyond Syria and Iraq and is establishing a foothold in Libya, which is becoming a safe haven for terrorists, the nation's top military intelligence official told Congress on Tuesday. China, meanwhile, is deploying its aircraft carrier killing DF-21D missile, and Russia significantly expanding its strategic nuclear forces with new missiles, Marine Corps Lieutenant General Vince Stewart said in testimony to a House Armed Service Committee on the global threats. Stewart presented a dire picture of growing threats in Iraq and Afghanistan, where national forces remain unable to defend their countries without foreign assistance despite billions of U.S. dollars supporting and training the rebels. The growing threat posed by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are being made more difficult to deal with because of U.S. cuts in defense spending, Stewart said in a prepared statement, noting that in recent events which, taken in aggregate, have created security challenges more diverse and complex than those ever expected in our lifetimes.
Well,
it sounds like a big justification.
Well, in a way it is, but in a way it's much bigger and much deeper. And if I can use this opportunity to plug what we call the Hagmann Hagmann University of Conspiracy and History, which still working on some revisions of the syllabus. It'll be up, but we're going to be picking this up next week. This class, this course next Monday. On our website, HagmannandHagmann.com, I'll just give you these numbers. Let me find it right here. Okay, here we go. As of about 40 minutes ago, I put a poll up. The question: how do you rate our new Hagmann and Hagmann University of Conspiracy Facts and History? And I give you 4 choices: excellent, excellent. No, I'm just kidding. Excellent, good, fair, and poor. As of about 45 minutes ago, we had 91.2% rating it excellent. That was our first program on Monday, our first 101 course, class, whatever, on Monday. 1,531 votes comprising 91.2%, excellent. And then 7.3% or 122 votes, good. 15 votes or 0.9% fair, and 11 votes, 0.7% poor. So, yeah, so what, 26 listeners feel that, okay, need some work, and the rest, some 90, what would that be, 98.5% feel pretty good about it. So we're going to continue that on Monday, but having said that, what you mentioned about ISIS, one of the aspects of ISIS that we're going to talk about just briefly, or real quick, within that course, is how the Sykes-Picot agreement really that created the lines, the national lines at the beginning of the 20th century. How the land of Iraq had been part of the Ottoman Empire for some 400 years, and how during the war, Mark Sykes of Britain and Francois Georges Picot of France got together, and they carved up the Ottoman Empire into nations. Well, that really kind of set the stage, because it wasn't sensible. I mean, they split down. They separated the secretariat, or they separated cohesive groups of people to make countries that would guarantee future conflict. Let me restate that. That agreement outlined countries, for example, like Iraq and Syria and Turkey, and the establishment of Israel, and made it so future conflict would be inevitable. Is that just stupidity, or no? Of course not.
Strategic planning.
Exactly, and that's one of the course things that we'll be talking about as well. So, single ethnic or religious groups were just sliced apart into separate countries, and unfriendly groups were grouped together. They were shoved into a nation together and demanded that they had to share their resources and share their neighborhood. They had to get along and bond over national pride for arbitrary lines, and that here we have it. And this is a very, look what happened with Iraq. Okay, if you look at Iraq, consider Iraq like a container or a pot of bubbling soup, or a pressure cooker even. And you've got to have a tight lid on the pressure cooker. Did you ever not have one? Okay, you know what happens, right? Well,
depends on what you're cooking.
The nation version of a tight lid can be either a strong Western occupying power or a dictator with a very strong military machine. Now, without either one of those, that nation or the nation's going to fall apart, or the lid from the pressure cooker is going to blow off. And this is what happened in Iraq. The new nation of Iraq, following the ouster of Saddam Hussein, where you had Sunni and Shia Arabs along with the Kurds sharing this nation, well, they were the components of this pressure cooker. And then, things were already hot right from the very start in Iraq when the new Iraqis revolted against the British occupation in 1920. The British, they were that lid that kept everything in the pressure cooker. After Iraq achieved independence and the British lid departed, there was a series of military commanders who took over the duties of holding that lid down, and then they stomped out a number of revolts and such. But in 1968, the Ba'ath Party took over, and of course we saw the leadership of Ahmed Hassan al-Baker and his ambitious Vice President General Saddam Hussein go into power. And then by 1979, Saddam Hussein's influence, it had grown to the point where he's kind of basically running the show anyway. So finally he went to his president and said, you got to retire. And it wasn't a suggestion, it was a requirement. It was a demand. And then he took over 24 years of an iron-fisted rule under Saddam. Bush goes in, topples Saddam Hussein, blows the lid off the pressure cooker, and now we've got a mess everywhere.
Yeah, and a lot of that was, Bush promised to keep the Iraqi military intact and, continuing to work for the Iraqi people. He not only went back on he didn't go back on his word. One of the people he appointed to create the policy in Iraq, Paul Bremer, one of his first issues of business was to dismantle the Iraqi army. And so you had hundreds of thousands of people who were out of work, who were trained in weaponry, who had weapons, who were now sent to go home, where all the looting and everything was taking place. Then you had the abolishment of the Ba'ath Party. All the political leaders of Iraq who were in the Ba'ath Party, who were part of the Saddam regime, who maybe even didn't agree with them, were removed from any consideration of political life in Iraq or power in Iraq. Then you see another policy divided the people and citizens of Iraq along religious lines, Sunni and Shiite. Then you have these dictators or rulers who are puppets of the West, who are put there, who have shown to be nothing more than, you can take the smartest person with the best education. If they have no real life experience, they're not going to be good leaders. Well, they were putting in these people who, on paper, would seem to be good leaders, but didn't have the personality, the charisma, the ability to do it. And it's been a spiraling effect of destruction ever since.
Nature abhors a vacuum. You've often heard that said. Well, Bush and that administration, against the advice of military, Joe, as you pointed out, created this power vacuum. And we had talked about this in many programs before, the Sunni, Shia, and Kurd areas in Iraq, and essentially it's three separate countries, as it would and should have been anyway, to avoid what we had seen, to avoid the necessity of having Saddam Hussein as a dictator to hold the lid on, or even any Western influence in the area. Now, through Sykes-Picot, and as a result of that, and as things progressed, we can see, and this makes sense now. When you understand, and this is my view anyway, when you understand history and understand the background and how we got here, and seeing the artificiality of the nation lines and the Western influence of causing coups and displacement of rulers, okay, now you can see how our meddling has caused exactly what we're going through. And people wonder, but they're clueless people that walk around saying, well, what's going on? What happened? I don't have a clue. Well, the reason you don't have a clue is because history is missing. And if you understand what we've done, and not just we, but the United Nations, or under the pretext of world peace via the United Nations as a vehicle, what we've done is to create the very groundwork for World War III. And of course, this is the extension of Albert Pike, his vision, his
3 World Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, folks, this is why it's so important, I think, for and to really kind of make it digestible, understandable, and concise, deliverable, especially over radio, with a print version, handy as well, so you can explain it during conversationally explain it, know it well enough to explain it conversationally. I think that, to me, I don't know, folks. Do you think that's a good idea? Because when you talk to people, you got to be well armed with facts. You have to understand, have a good working understanding. Did you ever try to explain something to someone that you don't know how?
You see me trying to explain things to you, and I can't say it and articulate the thoughts, ideas properly, and
right.
It's like I'm speaking Spanish.
Well, and especially if you don't know. For example, if somebody says, well, can you explain to me how a internal combustion engine works? No, I can't. And if you try, you just look like a fool, and you're out of your element. But if you know how these things work, if you know the beginnings of ISIS and why this Sunni jihadist group, you can trace this back to 1999, for example. You see, people think, oh, bang, all of a sudden this meteoric rise. And I mentioned this meteoric rise of ISIS. It doesn't mean that it didn't exist. It meant that all of a sudden just like Obama, that didn't mean that he was born a community organizer. No, he was born in 1961, allegedly. We'll see no proof of that. But ISIS, it just wasn't born recently. No, it was. You can trace it back to 1999, and you can trace this back to Abu Musab al-Zakari, this Jordanian. You know him. It's a guy that swore allegiance to Iraq. I think it was, or Al-Qaeda, mid-2000s. He kind of evolved out of the bin Laden Al-Qaeda in Iraq group, one of those very shadowy groups, terrorist groups, that, you look at and you just wonder how much external influence was involved. So, anyway, that's why this is all important. This is so important.
Another story here before we hit the top of the hour break and then turn to your calls. California lawmaker seeks to end personal belief for vaccine exemption. We've all seen or heard the stories of the measles outbreak here in this country, in different parts of the states, one in Disneyland, some in Phoenix, and it's sparking a new debate about the measles and what can be done to stop them. But responding to an outbreak of measles that has infected more than 100 people, 2 California lawmakers said on Wednesday they would introduce legislation to end the right for parents to choose or to exempt their children from school vaccinations based on personal beliefs.
Joe, what's up with Rand Paul getting a vaccination? Just think about that. All right, just think about that. Go ahead, continue.
California public health officials say 92% of people have been diagnosed with measles in the state. Many of them linked to an outbreak that they believe began when an infected person from an outside country visited Disneyland in late December. More than a dozen other cases have been confirmed in 19 other states and Mexico, renewing the debate over the so-called anti-vaccination movement in which fears about potential side effects from vaccines, fueled now by debunked science, have led to a small minority of parents to refuse to allow their children to be vaccinated. So, potential side effects of vaccines fueled by debunked science?
Well,
this, of course, from Reuters.
Yeah,
And that's not even an issue here.
Alex Jones is doing a good job of covering this.
And the issue here is not whether the vaccination side effects have been proved or unproven. That the vaccines and their content have absolutely nothing to do with this story. What is at the core of this story is the government or state stepping in to try to take away the choice of the parents on whether they want their son or daughter to be vaccinated or not. They are turning this into it is not going to be the choice of the parents because we, the state, are saying you have to.
Right. And it's becoming so bad.
Your children, you have to stop thinking of your children as your own and start thinking of them more in the sense of they belong to us, the community, the state, as Melissa Harris Perry's MSNBC commercial kindly stated.
Man, boy.
How many people have died from this measles outbreak?
I don't know, but I mean there were hundreds infected, right?
And if nobody wants measles, everybody who feels the vaccination is safe and keeps them from receiving measles, you go get your vaccination. What harm is it to you if the person next to you doesn't have it? Because even if they get measles, you're already vaccinated.
Well, yes. I mean, that's the argument. But I've been reading and I've been following this closely, and what I see trending, and folks, I think this is extremely important. You are looking at a situation where measles, and we talked about Ebola. Remember us talking about Ebola a couple of months back, okay, saying that it's going to be latent until sometime in the early part of this year, January, February, March. Well, looking at that, but also the disease that's been affecting the children, the Central American disease that's coming up and affecting children. Now we've got this measles outbreak. Well, maybe we were wrong. Maybe it's all of the above that will be the basis for mandating vaccines. And it's interesting because people are coming forth and saying the risk of having your child vaccinated is negligible. The statistics are low. Well, that you know what? When you become a statistic, statistics become meaningless. But the fact is, there is a push to paint those who refuse to be vaccinated or have their children vaccinated as criminals. And that's what they're going to be looked at as criminals.
Unfit parents.
Unfit parents, that's right. It's not up to the federal government to demand this. It's not really even the state government, although if it were to be legislated, I would contend that it would be a state government issue. But it's more of a decision by the parent or by the person, if the person is of legal age. But the fact is, they're demonizing these. They're called. If you look at again the sewage pit that's known as Democratic Underground, or even the marginally questionable website with a very Republican in name only Free Republic. What?
You said the sewage pit. I thought you were talking about Washington D.C.
Well,
not a website.
That too. I mean,
applies.
Yeah. I mean, you look at these, and you know, the Huffington Post and all of these big name forums and websites that have an agenda, and you see these people who take a stand against, or even asking the question, "What's in the vaccine?" Don't worry about it. It's actually it's fine. You know, it's fine. Just trust us. Oh, come on, man. You know, you heard before. You heard my our studio puppy bark. I had taken her, I think it was 8 weeks, for a vaccination to the veterinarian, and the veterinarian gave her, I can't remember what it was. It was a multiple vaccination, and I keep detailed records on my. I mean, I love her. I mean, it's a great pup, and you know how they give the shot in the right shoulder of the dog? That happened. We took her in. I think my wife and I took her in at 11 o'clock, and right before airtime. In fact, Joe, I think you covered for me for about an hour. I noticed this really intense swelling over her shoulder, and she was kind of lethargic. And I got really worried, so I ran her into the vet right before airtime and said, look, I want you to take a look. And the doctor said, oh, yeah, she had an adverse reaction to the vaccine. Well, and he said sometimes that happens, especially if you have administered too many at once, or like he said we administer 3 at one time, or whatever it was. And me not having a puppy for forever, I didn't know that. So just imagine if that was your child. And it's all about, when you look at this, when you look at the vaccines, don't just look at what they're telling you. Look at the big agenda behind this. And the agenda it's an agenda of eugenics. Shame on them.
Yeah. We are up against another top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to take your phone calls at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. Call in now, line up, and we will discuss anything in the news or otherwise that you want to talk about.
Let us know how you feel.
A lot of other news that we can get into, a lot of things going on, a lot of things we missed. So weigh in at 661-244-9839. We'll be back after these short messages. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Wednesday, February 4th, 2015. To our final hour of this Wednesday, February 4th, 2015 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking your phone calls this hour, and we have a number of callers lined up already. But if you want to get in, give us a call. 661-244-9839 is the number. And unless you have something you want to jump in with, we're going to go right to the calls.
You know what? I do, but let's go to the calls anyway. Let's just do it. Let's go. See what's on your mind.
We'll go to area code 585 first. 585, we're coming to you. You are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Joe, Doug. How are you?
Great.
Can you hear me?
I think we can, yeah.
All righty. I typed in early because I wanted to discuss the Islam ISIS thing. Kind of afraid that we're not looking at the long picture. After a few generations, things tend to be forgotten by people. And I know you have a very, very good insight into what it all is, how it all operates, but wondering what you guys know about Islamic eschatology.
Well, quite a bit, but the split, how Islam began, and of course the split, Sunni Shia split.
Right.
Exactly where are we going to go with this?
Right. Okay. Looking at I believe the picture begins right there, Genesis 3:15. Right there at the beginning in the garden. We have the roots of it go all the way back. Egypt, strengthened by the land of sin, which is Saudi Arabia, Sinai, and all of that.
Right.
And how it goes back further, I think, than a lot of people realize. And we see today's political maneuverings that have brought up the rise of ISIS and the other areas the other things that are going on. But I think it ties into Daniel chapter 7, where the four beasts are going to rise. It's separated. A lot of people like to connect that to Daniel 2. But Daniel 7 is kind of encapsulated as its own thing, and it describes the different beasts that arise and everything else. But one will end up, he'll take the cake. And it's mirrored again in Revelation 13. But we have a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't see the series of the seven beasts and then its mortal wound in 22 or 24, when the Ottoman Empire was broken
right.
up.
Okay. Just to be clear, Genesis obviously predates the Islam. You're looking at the beginning of Islam with the birth of Muhammad in 570 and Mecca, and then of course you move on to the split in after Muhammad died in 632, I think it was. I could be wrong on that, but you had the birth of Shia Islam, the march of a caliphate, and it's interesting. People have to know, for example, the difference between Sunnis and Shias, and the fact that Shia Islam or Shia Muslims are looking for the return of the Imam Mahdi, which of course is they're looking for the return, which is the antithesis of our Lord and Savior, one might argue.
Right. Thanks for lining me up. What I'm looking at is the thing that we call Islam. When we say Islam, we look back to the 600s when Muhammad came, and did his thing. But the roots of that system go back much, much further. Are
you talking about the lineage of Cain, perhaps? Is that, or the beguiling, the account of, or the belief that Eve was beguiled by a serpent and fathered the Cain lineage, or another lineage that would give birth to the well, shall I say the Merovingian? That wouldn't be absolutely correct, but the bloodline that will produce or has produced Islam and perhaps produce the Antichrist. Ultimately, is that what you're saying?
Kind of. I haven't tied it back to Cain. As far as I've managed to track it through the Bible is back to Ishmael and Esau.
Okay, we can definitely go there. Yeah.
Okay. And where they kind of were the progenitors to the mixed race, as the Hebrews would have called it, the Arav, or Arab, as it's become, and the sons of Greece, and that's kind of that combination, the mixed people. Whereas with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God takes great pains in showing us how that was not a mixing, that was actually a very specific combining of certain genetic lines. But that mixed people that became the group that is now known kind of as Islam, where you have the Turks and all the people that were mixed into these groups. When it ties together, when you look at Daniel 2, he speaks of the head of gold as the Babylonian kingdom, and you can see that kingdom is mirrored in the actual methodology that Islam uses today for their worship. With the sound of the music, they turn and they bow to the image and they pray 4 or 5 times a day.
But without getting into the Daniel, without getting into the statute of Daniel, because that involves a lot of interpretation. If you can stick with Ishmael, for example, Ishmael is really accepted as the ancestor to Muhammad, and of course, from the Ishmael lineage, which is undisputed, whereas the previous to that we can have some intellectual disagreements, but Ishmael forward to bring forth what you're referencing, I understand that. So yes, but on the other hand, I think we have to be careful now because I'm going to just go ahead and let you. What are you getting at with the Ishmael lineage here? Where are we headed with this? Because just go ahead.
My contention is that thing that we call Islam will eventually end up being the beast system of revelation. Because there's a lot of scriptural reasons for that. And what we're seeing is the small picture of where, we have ISIS and they're coming through and they're fighting against different Muslims, and we see Turkey playing some sort of a quiet part in this whole thing. Saudi Arabia kind of sitting back, and now we've got Jordan that's like almost standing up, almost like an ally of Israel. And I don't know which war it is in Scripture, but one where the Ammonites are going to be, they're going to sit it out, and I think the Midianites, the Arabians, are going to sit it out at first. When the king of the south.
But let me stop you there. Doesn't the beast system give birth or give rise to the Antichrist that the entire world will worship? Forget Islam for a second. Okay, so okay, now if you apply Islam to the beast system, and this statement, even the very elect, if possible, will be deceived. You're going to have people worshiping someone who will ostensibly eradicate the Islamic threat, and in so doing, also the Jewish and Christian religion. So what you've got is you've got an identifiable bad guy, as opposed to someone who would come in peace. And even if you want to stretch it to a moderate Muslim, if there is no such a thing, but I don't see that happening across the world. I think it's going to be much more convoluted than that. Now and
that's where Daniel 7 ties in.
Okay.
Because the the four beasts that are there. The winds of the heaven blowing upon the great sea, with the winds being the spirits, the spirits, and the great sea being the people. We see that happening today, where everybody is getting real emotional about the things that are going on. And
by design.
My take, right. Well, we know who's been the architect of all of this since forever. It's all these. We're going to end up with basically four major empires, for lack of a better descriptive, that are going to be trying to deal with the issues that the other empires are creating. And I think that's one of the problems that we've seen for such a long time, with people looking at Daniel 7 as being just a rehashing of the old empires in Daniel 2. That's kind of the predominant thinking in a lot of Christianity, is that Daniel 7 is just Daniel 2 rehashed. And I don't think that's the case, and I think that's why God encapsulated Daniel 7 the way he did.
In a couple of sentences, I mean, what's the bottom line here that you see taking place?
Just that we're going to have the four empires come rising up, and I don't know what they are. The only one that I'm certain about is the fourth one, the diverse one. That I'm not seeing it being Islam per se by name anymore, but something that will use that system that they use. And I think that's, the peacemaker's going to come out of Turkey somewhere and kind of draw it all together with the Sufis, the whirling dervishes, that for some reason people think that they're the most moderate of all.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that whole theory. I do understand that. I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
I've got a different take on it, because I do believe that based on the totality of evidence and considering the bloodlines, and if you study the bloodlines, I do believe that the Antichrist will arise out of the British Empire, the royalty, and it'll be the culmination of all of the bloodlines of reportedly of Jesus that will be identified as the Messiah, and it'll be the counterfeit Messiah. But I understand what you're saying, and I understand how you arrive at that. But man, look, we're all speculating at this point. So,
right.
But good.
Right. I'm just trying to put all of this together with the Illuminati and everything else. That's your program that you're doing with the Satanists and all of that is kind of helping to bring some of this together. I'm hoping that we can end up with people realizing that, when you think moderate Muslim, you have to think along the lines of more cultural Muslim. They don't really know that much about their own claimed religion. But when a radical, jihadi imam shows up at their door and says, "Pick up your sword, we're going on jihad to kill your neighbors, or you're going to die as a kafir," all of a sudden, whether they've been living under Al-Taqiyya or Maruna, and they know what's up, or whether they were just ignorant, they're all going to get on board.
Of course, and they could be living they're living in Detroit, and they're occupying the White House and the DHS, and that's right, they're everywhere.
Yep.
Well, very enlightening, and we appreciate that. And as we get into this, we'll be checking back with you for your expansion, because I think we have a lot to offer on the satanic side of things as our programs, instructional programs, continue. So just stay with us, and
will do.
Appreciate it. All right, man.
Thanks
for that. All right,
have a good night. All right. Good call. We're going to keep on rolling. 218. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hey, guys. It's Laurel, who used to call in from South Dakota, that now God has brought me to the middle of nowhere, Minnesota.
Well, it's great to hear from you.
And Doug, I don't know if you've seen my email. In the subject line, it says it's Laurel. I sent you pictures of my new long-haired German Shepherd puppy. She's just turned 9. So I've got a new puppy too.
I've got that picture on my board. Yes.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Isn't she cute?
Very much.
But anyway, did you also see in the email, this is why I was calling you, because you had somebody on talking about cyber threats and cyber attacks a couple weeks ago, and I think you guys were mentioning that North site.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
And,
sorry about
and
that.
remember, you could watch real-time those strikes coming across at the United States. And I actually called the company and tried to find out what it was all about. And the guy told me that for every one of those strikes you watch represents 1,000 cyber hits.
Right.
And I said, well, why do that? He goes, if we didn't, it would just flood the board would go white. So I wanted to pass that on to anybody else that's watching that site, that every one of those only represents 1,000, actually represents 1,000 hits.
Yeah, actually, Laurel, we talked about this on the 23rd of January, and how I remember that is because I do have a picture of your German Shepherd on my board. It's a beautiful, beautiful German Shepherd, and in front of it looks like in front of a bookcase, your mission dog, Karma.
Yeah. Yep. Karma, my mission dog. Yes.
Yep.
I lost my journey dog in June, so I feel your pain.
Yes. Well, she is a sweetheart. I'll tell you, looks like a sweetheart. And in fact, I was teasing my wife. I said I asked Laurel to reserve to contact her breeder and reserve a German Shepherd pup for me. But
it's the first German Shepherd I've had that I'm considering breeding. And they don't breed them until they're about 1.5 to 2 years old. So I will put you on that list because I get half the puppies.
Well, I might have to find another place to live, But the
other thing, one last quick thing, and I'll get off because I know there's so many people in line. But on that salmon issue from last night, I believe.
Yep.
I don't know anything about farm salmon, but what I understand about like farm-raised shrimp, you need to watch and look on the package where it came from, because I know in China they raise their shrimp in sewers.
I got so much email, and Laurel, and ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I got so many emails about that, mentioning the salmon and the seafood from the Gulf and versus.
Well, you can't eat. Yeah, the seafood in the Gulf is destroyed.
Right.
That's where I when I lived down at the beach outside of Galveston, I'd go to the docks and pick me some. They dehead the big shrimp for me, and I'd go home and barbecue them. They're finding them with 2 heads, cancerous, gross. Nobody's eating the sea. The Gulf is dead, pretty much.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's a shame.
Bad. Yeah. So
it really is.
Well, I think all we got left is catfish now. or you could come up here to Minnesota and do some ice fishing.
Or go a little further south, eh? All right.
North.
North, yeah.
Well, listen,
right.
I listened to you guys, and God bless you both, and I'm planning on listening to the teaching, so I wish you the best with that, and with that, I'll get off the air.
All right. Well, God bless you, Lord. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Boy, folks, if you could see this, just a beautiful picture of a German Shepherd. I just love, dogs have a special place in my heart. Sorry, I got off track, but right there, Joe, you can see the picture right there on the board. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful dog! And I do that. I probably have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other dogs in addition to Karma on the board. People sent in pictures, so pretty cool.
Excellent.
All right, yeah.
All right, area code. We're going to go to area code 770. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hello.
Hey.
Good evening.
Hey, how are you?
Good. What's up?
Good. I was just wondering, just a quick question, if you've ever heard of or interviewed Lorraine Moray. Lauren Moray.
No.
She's a radiation expert, and she talks about Fukushima and the causes of these plane crashes being high levels of radiation, over 600 becquerels. You got to look her up, LEURENMORET. She's out of Berkeley, California. Brilliant lady. She sure does sound like it. And she does mention...
what was her first name? What was her first name?
LEUREN, Lauren Moray, MORET, and she's interviewed on YouTube.
Okay.
And she comes with the credentials that you guys like, but she does say some things about the Jesuit connection and how InfoWars. And I'd like you to do some research on that, because I do enjoy him on InfoWars, and the Coast to Coast. She mentions him being Jesuit, CIA. I don't want to tarnish anybody's reputation, but she mentions that openly, and she says it like she knows it. So if you could look at that up and maybe mention that on your show, I would appreciate it. Very interesting lady.
We will look. We'll do some research, and I have not heard of her before, but certainly we'll do some research, and we'll see what pans out here. Appreciate that. Interesting.
Sure thing.
Interesting about the radiation. Haven't heard that before.
Well, she's saying that the Geiger counters that they have now have been scrambled somehow and they're not accurate. The columns of air carrying this radiation is being used by these storms, by HAARP, they move these storms wherever they want to move them, from Fukushima, around that area, wherever they want to send radiation, they send radiation to, using Fukushima. I mean, you guys would be blown away. This lady's brilliant, and I'd like to know if she's legit. I've done limited research, but she talks about, she said an airline pilot called her with all these symptoms of radiation poisoning, saying all his friends are dying from cancer, and they're, the Asian pilots, and this was a German pilot, and basically he had all the symptoms, and she says that's exactly what's going on. The radiation is eating right through the fittings and the bearings and all the pieces of the planes, and they're in such bad shape, and it's a big cover-up. She openly says it, so it's very interesting to see her point of view. Is she's, so I would appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing.
Okay, we'll talk to Stan Dale about that too, and get his take. But we'll definitely look for it. Very good. I appreciate that information.
Awesome. Well, bless you guys. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, man.
You too. Thanks for the call.
See you, man.
All right. Moving right along here. Let's go to 443 next. 443. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Wednesday evening.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. It's my first time calling in.
Well, we appreciate
my grandma's probably listened to me. My grandma went to guys a while back, so she might be listening if she hasn't fallen asleep to your show.
Hi, Grandma.
She does it every night.
Aw, God bless her heart.
Her name is. She'll know it when she hears her name. Mom June, we call her. So the whole community does.
What was that, Mom?
Mom June.
Mom June. All right, Mom June. If you're awake, hi.
Good evening.
Yeah. All right.
So I wanted to wanted to let you guys know I'll definitely be listening when you guys cover the Super Bowl, because I had some information that I believe that it was spirit led, and I know you guys haven't really covered it yet, but I just wanted to tell you that from what I looked up online to get other people's takes. Not many people have said much, but I do see a one recurring statement, which is that she came in on, people are saying it's a lion, and I did not see that animal was a lion. What I saw was a tiger. And I did go back and watch it a couple of times. I can see where people thought the pronounced chest on that animal she rode in on was, kind of looked like a mane or something. But to me, I thought it looked like a pronounced muscular chest of a tiger. And when you listen to the song that she was singing, maybe.
Sorry. Yeah, no. Honestly, when I first saw it, my first instinct was, first of all, what the heck's that? And then second of all, looks like a lion. But okay.
Right. And you know, I do see where people.
No. Oh, seems like we're losing you. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Try not to move your head too much because we're losing the signal, I think, from you. But go ahead.
I'm sorry. When you put into perspective that it could be a tiger, that brings in a whole bunch of different theories, especially in light of the fact, I think you guys covered the possibility that the United States might be giving away land to Asia or China.
Yes. Fire sale prices,
so when you
definitely, yes. New York City.
Yes.
I think some ridiculously high percentage of all commercial real estate in New York City and Manhattan, I should say to be more precise, is owned by China, including the Waldorf now, as well as J.P. Morgan Chase, the vaults underneath it. Yeah, it's all Chinese owned. So.
Okay. All right. I work, by the way, once for Iron Mountain, and one of the guests that you had on mentioned on his web. Kind of a little bit shifty. I did some temp work for them, and I did not feel right when I worked there as well. But I think my whole point in calling is just to let you know that the Super Bowl, a lot of times there can be more than one message in something, multiple subliminal messages being sent.
Sure.
And what I got out of it was with her possibly riding in on a tiger, as opposed to a lion. And then, firstly, the next thing that you see is the checkerboard with all the chess players on it, and you see, you see what looks like to me New York kind of work out of that. See her in California. It really kind of sent me a message saying that Asia is going to be taking over from coast to coast. And that may be part of their plan, and that might be what they were communicating to one another in that. So interesting
analysis. Well, please listen tomorrow if you have the opportunity. Nathan Leal will be on, and then what we don't cover with Nathan, we will finish up at some future time because I think it's so important, and I do believe all of this is. Everything that we're talking about from 2012 to the present, it's all connected. It's a message, and I think you're right. And of course, again, I don't know about a tiger, lion, but regardless, maybe it was designed to give that. Maybe it was designed for the ambiguity. I don't know, but whatever it was.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you. You're breaking up a little bit. We're losing you, I think. I just want to say thank you so much for your calling in the first time, and hi, Mom June. All right.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good night.
All right. See you.
Bye. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk to Nathan about what he perceived that to be. Lion and tiger. Liger.
Well, wasn't that from what was that movie? Napoleon Dynamite or something? Liger.
Yeah, I never really paid attention to that movie. You like that movie too much from my recollection. All right, 631. 631, you're up next. You're live on this Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Long Island, come on in.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is, how you doing, this is Trevor. It's my first time calling in. I've listened to you guys for like over a year. So I look forward to hearing you guys.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're calling from Long Island, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I've been listening to you guys, so like I've been trying to, keep up with current events and see what's going on in the world and stuff like that. And I learned a lot listening to you guys and Steve, and I've been listening because this is my first time actually being able to, or listen to you live. I usually listen more on YouTube. So once I got my computer fixed, now I can hear you guys live, from the regular time.
Well, I'm glad you're listening live. It gives you the chance to call in. Anything specifically on your mind with respect to current events or what's going on or what has gone on?
Well, I'm really concerned about I'm doing a lot of research about the forced vaccinations. I'm really concerned about that because I don't think that's right. I work at a hospital, psychiatric hospital, and now we have to take the flu shot. Otherwise, they make you wear a mask during the flu season. And I just feel like that's against my constitutional rights to, not take that shot. And I heard some people not being even terminated because they don't want to take the flu shot. So, stuff
now,
like that,
just to be clear, the flu shot, because generally speaking, the flu shot is perhaps one of the least effective or least it's hard to zero in on the current strain. So I mean it's elusive. So the flu shot. But are you saying that? Yeah,
well, I work at an OMH facility, and the Department of Health in New York State mandate anyone that works at a facility like a hospital, nurse home, they have to obtain the flu shot.
So okay. Well, it makes sense that you would have to. Or it makes sense that they would push it upon you and people that you work with. So, wow. Okay. Well, yeah. The forced vaccination is an issue that we need to cover a lot. A lot more detail. And I think it's going to come to that.
Right, and I was also trying to do some research about the Obamacare and about the stipulation comes with it. And I listened a little bit of the State of the Union last week when he was talking about raising the minimum wage and stuff to help people. Is that just something like a flaw to try to get people to, I guess, get his ratings, or what is? Do you have any input on that?
Well, there's a lot of fluff that is involved in his speeches, whether on foreign policy or monetary issues, socioeconomic issues. He will talk about his aims and aspirations and goals as the incoming year or upcoming year is at hand, and the Senate and House is there listening to him. But yeah, he says a lot of what I would call wishful thinking, or things he says he'd like to do but knows he'll never do them, let alone if he had the opportunity, probably would do them anyway. I mean,
and to answer your question though, specifically about the minimum wage, this is my belief in researching this. If you look at the illegal aliens in this country who are attempting or who are going for jobs, this is a backdoor method of, in my view anyway, based on my research, to rid the workforce of the American worker, replace them, for example, with the minimum wage at the higher level for the illegal aliens in particular, and destroy the middle class. Right. This is what they're trying to do, or what he's trying to do and his team. That's kind of, it takes longer than a paragraph to explain it, but ultimately that's the goal. I believe it is to destroy the middle class.
Especially when he passed the immigrants in, I was really upset about that. And I also saw on Newsday last year there was to be a Grumman Center here in Bethpage. They wanted to turn that facility, because it's been closed for many years. They wanted to turn that into a detention center for them, but thank God they fought and decided not to do that.
Right. Yep. Well, brother, man, thank you. God, I'll tell you what. I just hope. So many things coming at us all at once. We just have to really pray, keep our focus solid, and I thank you for listening, and please continue to listen. And God bless you, and have a great, safe time on Long Island. It's a neat place.
A lot of snow. I hear more snow is expected.
Hey, join the club.
Yeah, I know you guys. Well, you guys like in Montana, right?
No, we're
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, northwest Pennsylvania.
Oh, it's not that far away.
Well, it's about 6.5 hours from here to the GW Bridge. So on a normal day, but I remember many days traveling the Long Island Expressway in snow. So, well, all right, brother. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it. God bless, man. Take care.
Have a great night.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Area code 804. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hi, guys. Maria here. Got something real quick for you.
Sure.
Just about the Middle East thing. Remember the prophecy over Ishmael, who's basically the father of the Arabs, that Ishmael will be a wild ass of a man. That's a wild donkey that bites and kicks and you can't ride him. Right. And it says his hand will be raised against every man, and every man's hand will be raised against him. I think that's a pretty good description of what we see.
Exactly. Yeah, and well, how what? There's more to that as well. I mean, as we see things unfolding here, what's the end game with respect to Ishmael, the line of Ishmael?
I don't know. All I know is we can expect that as long as he's around, he's going to be fighting and kicking and biting anything that's near him, including each other. They say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, that's until you finish beating up your enemy, then you fight each other. But, I mean, they're just amazing at the amount of...
Yeah.
They're like those. They're like some kinds of animals that just bite at everything, Now, there are individuals that aren't like that. I've got a good friend who's a Palestinian Arab who's a Christian. Once God changes your heart, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right, yep.
But the other thing is they're intense, so they'll never be Laodiceans like so many Americans are. They'll either be really bad or really good. So that has, the intensity has its... I learned a lot from my friend, the Palestinian Arab. I understand the Old Testament better now. You see these intense people that when these sudden drastic changes, and she's like that. She just suddenly this and suddenly that and everything with her whole heart, and boom. It gives me a better picture of understanding of reading the Old Testament and how the people act there.
It's interesting how, everything can be, I've found that all the answers can be found really from the Bible, or if you look at the Bible, it provides a context for current events, and that caller that mentioned that Ishmael indeed is correct, Isaac and Ishmael in Christianity, in the Bible.
Right, and see, our God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The children of Esau were also a problem. So ours is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, Lot's daughters, that's where the Moabites came from. So they were a problem for Israel, and they're a problem in the Middle East too. And they were accursed and were supposed to be wiped out, but weren't. But Jesus is descended from them. Ruth the Moabitess.
From who? Just so I'm clear on this.
Ruth the Moabitess is in the lineage of Jesus. So he comes from, he's Jewish, but one of the Israelis married a Moabite woman named Ruth.
Okay.
And she's in the lineage of David.
All right.
So it shows how God can redeem anybody and anything. It doesn't matter if it's an accursed race. Once you become a child of God, you're not a member of that group anymore. You're a member of the kingdom of heaven. You have a different citizenship. You have a different family. You have a different... you can't quite call it a bloodline. Well, it's the blood of Jesus.
Right. Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just trying to put this together here, but okay, I see what you're getting at.
It just kind of, it's besides all the shenanigans at the CIA and the this and that, they had fertile ground to work with because of the temperament of the people. The every man's hand raised against every man and every man's hand raised against him.
Okay.
It fits right into the prophecy.
Right, and I think I was perhaps not intentionally, but I was suggesting that through my depiction of a dog, a rabid dog, and then the handlers and
right.
such. But okay, I understand that. Yeah. Let me ask you this: did through the angel sparing Abraham's son,
Ishmael's supposed to be here? Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So
God did miracles to preserve him, and Israel's supposed to be besieged. Well, God allowed the snake in the garden. He allowed the devil in there. He's in the business of testing people's hearts. But the other thing is, the only way you develop godly character is by working out against resistance. That's why the persecuted church is always the church at its best and strongest.
Okay. All right.
Most wholehearted. Because you got to be to survive.
Well, yeah. All right.
You can't sit on the fence in that situation. You've got to go for it with everything in you. And I'll tell you, my Palestinian Arab friend, she'll do that. Nobody is ever going to make her bend or compromise. No way.
Well,
she puts most of us Americans to shame.
Right, but Christian though you're talking about, because
she's a Christian. Yeah.
Right. Because we can cite. Okay, we can cite, if we want to go back to the Old Testament, we can cite Romans 9, where God chooses to bless Jacob over Esau and Isaac over Ishmael, and then that would, I suppose, or let me pose it as a question: would that not make via Ishmael Islam inconsistent with the Scripture, if the Abrahamic covenant anyway that was passed down through Ishmael? In other words,
it was passed down through Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's where the covenant goes. It's made very clear in Scripture.
Right, but there's a kind of a
Ishmael and Esau are not part of the Abrahamic covenant.
There we go. Okay,
they're not
that's
part of it.
Okay, that's yeah, and we note that in Genesis when we talk about Esau born. Yeah, I got it. Okay, I don't want.
Now there's another effect of ISIS, by the way, and that is there are decent people who are Muslims who they were just raised in the culture. And they're horrified. They're saying, if this is Islam, I don't want anything to do with it. And so there are record numbers of Muslims converting to Christianity.
And that's happening in Iran, according to people like Bill Salas and others, especially in Iran. There's
and there was a lot of conversions also after 9/11. They saw people dancing in the streets over it, and they were just horrified. Wait a minute. If that's what this is about, I don't want it.
Right.
What else is there? And why do they hate the Christians so much? Why are they afraid of that book, that Bible of theirs?
Interesting. Yeah.
So God can use this. I'm praying for children of Ishmael and the children of Isaac to come into the kingdom. God's going to use this. I mean, the bad guys are using it their way, but what they mean for evil, God's going to bring good out of it too.
Well, isn't God testing the faith of His own people through false religions anyway?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, okay. Matthew chapter 24, for example, talks about the false religions, and watch out that no one misleads you, and so on. So, I mean, this would be applicable to what we're seeing today with the false religions, and in my view, Islam being one of them. But okay.
And He also promised, if you seek me with your whole heart, you'll find me. Well, Jesus is truth incarnate. He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. If anybody is looking for truth with their whole heart, they're looking for Jesus. They just don't know the truth has a name and is a person.
Oh, okay.
So eventually, they'll run into Him. I heard a testimony of a man who was a Hindu priest, and he heard an audible voice. He's doing his thing in the temple, the Hindu temple there, and he heard an audible voice tell him, you're worshiping the wrong God. You need to worship the God who died and came back to life. So he went wandering around India for years trying to find out who is this God, and he finally met some Christians. Then he became an on-fire Christian and an evangelist.
Huh. Interesting.
So God has ways of reaching people that really want the truth.
Absolutely. And he'll do that through people. He'll do that through experiences, observations.
Absolutely.
The Lord will, if he wants to and has planned to, will get your attention whether you are seeking it or not. He will show you.
He can, yeah. And it can even happen on a person's deathbed.
Oh, of course, yeah. And I think I wonder how many deathbed conversions there are.
Hopefully, a lot more than we imagine.
And hopefully, they're sincere as opposed to,
well, the fakey things. But I think I knew a gal. Her family was Jewish, and she'd been praying and praying for her father. She became a Christian. And he died. He was in the hospital, and his heart monitor went flatline. And then he came back, and he had seen Jesus. And he gave his life to Jesus and came back and told his family about it, and then 2 weeks later he died. So Jesus sent him back to tell his family, to witness to his family. Well, if that's one we know about, how many thousands are there we never heard of?
That's true.
So God has all kinds of ways. We have our boxes, but he's got all kinds of creative ways of reaching people.
Absolutely. We have to be open and diligent and keeping the Holy Spirit in close proximity to us personally in order to be able to hear those and see those messages, because in my experience, you're so preoccupied with things that aren't important or don't pertain to him that you don't see what he's saying to you.
Well, that's right. Well, I had one of my grandmothers was such a rough woman, my brother and I used to call her the Dragon Lady, and she would never talk about God or anything like that, and would never let her husband go to church or anything. But when she was dying of cancer, she died at home, and she was not getting wiped out with pills in those days, She was quite conscious. She suddenly sat up in bed and asked her nurse, "How do you undo a sin?"
How do you undo?
Well, the word sin had never been in her vocabulary before.
Out of the blue.
She'd never talked in those terms.
Wow.
So something was going on, and the nurse, she was an Irish lady, she said, tell God you're sorry, dearie. And grandmother lay back down mumbling. She was doing it. So I hope to see her in heaven.
Absolutely. That's an amazing story by itself if you think about it. Out of nowhere, not typically talking like that. And of course, as you mentioned, not under the influence of any type of drug that would initiate something like that. So, interesting.
She loved classical music, and that she loved Bach, and a lot of Bach and Handel, and their words are right out of Scripture.
Right.
So because of her love of music, she was getting saturated with Scripture, even though she didn't believe in God. She was still getting the Word of God in her. And then there came a time when God brought that forward.
And I believe, and I know that, you believe in the simplicity of it, but I believe in the complexity of it as well, where you're talking about perhaps a harmonic influence over one's spirit based on the music, where, for example, when you hear heavy metal and this garbage stuff that's satanic, it appeals to harmonics in a different way. So
she felt something with the Bach that there was a solidity and a peace and something there that really drew her. Well, that's something that was inspired by God. So she was getting a little taste or a little whiff of heaven there, and she wanted it. Interesting how that works. Wow. And by the way, both of my parents met in a choir as non-believers, but they loved the music. And then when they were in their 60s, they became Christians. But they've been saturated with Scripture all those years, singing the St. Matthew Passion and those kinds of things,
Interesting story. Maria, we're up against the close of the program. I just want to say thank you so much for the call and
for
good
the
information.
Insight.
Yeah.
Always welcome to call in anytime, and
Absolutely.
Thanks for all you do. And Maria Knies,
Prepare for Persecution. Go to the bottom of our page, order her book. I'm telling you, what a great book. Prepare for Persecution, Maria Knies. That was our last caller. Maria, thank you. Good night. God bless you. Folks, tomorrow night, Nathan Liel. Friday, Ted Broer. You can't miss the rest of the week. It's going to be fantastic. I want to say thank you to everyone listening. Thank you for taking part in our poll. And our course outline will be up here as soon as I can get it up real soon. God bless everyone. Have a good night.